Good afternoon. Good to see such a big audience. I'm here with a man who has inspired millions of Indians to work for the environment and particularly to clean up and save the fantastic, beautiful big rivers of India. So I think we will explore a little bit what inspires you and then how you are able to inspire others, and then later we'll move on to maybe the more practical issues regarding how you can achieve such a big movement in India. But let me start with this very simple question. I mean, I read your biography. You're coming from Mysore. For those of you who are not familiar with India, that's a city in Karnataka state in southern India. I've been there once, and it's the overwhelming impression when you get there is Shiva's bull. There's a Shiva, of course, is the god, and every god in Hinduism has a vehicle, and Shiva has the bull. And that's what you see when you remember from Mysore. But later you have moved on to Tamil Nadu, to the city of Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu. All this is southern India. But let's start there. I mean, how you have been inspired to start working for the environment?
Namaskaram. Good afternoon to everyone. My engagement with rivers and forests of southern India started very early for me. When I was 8–9 years of age, if I got enough money to buy food for 3 to 4 days, I just managed this and disappeared into the jungles by myself. Well, it was a big concern for those who bore me, but
Your mother liked it?
I just lived in the jungles, and when I was there, I did not experience this as some kind of nature or natural beauty. I just saw it as a life larger than myself. And when I was 17, I floated down Kaveri River for 163 kilometers for 13 days, eating off the river, living off the river, just on 4 truck tubes and a few bamboos. And the river is a life beyond you and me. People like you and me come and go, but these rivers have been flowing for millions of years and they must flow forever. But such a mighty life, we've brought it down to its knees today. The rivers that I saw at that time, 50 years ago, and the rivers that I see today are just half of what they used to be. They say average depletion is around 44%. But many rivers are well below half, and many of them which were perennial for millions of years have become seasonal rivers. This year, Kaveri did not touch the ocean for 3.5 months. It dried up 170 kilometers inland. The entire length of Kaveri in Tamil Nadu, between these two states, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, there is a big war for water. It's going on for the last 25 years. But the entire length of the river is only 430 kilometers, but it dried up 170 kilometers inland. And the sad part is, when we did this painting competition across the country in over 160,000 schools, many children, when we asked them to paint a river, they just painted sand. This is the experience of the people.
And why is that? Why are they going so dry? Is agriculture? Why is it happening?
See, in India, only 4% of the river water is glacial or ice-fed. Rest is all forest-fed. Forest-fed essentially means we have rains. Unlike in Europe, we have rains for only on an average of 40 to 45 days across the country, which is our monsoon. This 45 days of precipitation, we are supposed to hold it in the land for 365 days and let it go in the river slowly. If this has to happen, substantial vegetation has to be there. There is a serious removal of vegetation, not only in the form of forests, but also in the farmlands there used to be vegetation. For example, in the Ganga basin, which amounts to 25% of India's geography and 33% of India's agricultural produce, in the last 50 years, we have removed 94% of the green cover, 94%. This has happened mainly because I know this well, because 45 years ago I was into farming, and at that time when the new movement came of green revolution, where we started using fertilizers for the first time, chemical fertilizers, fertilizer companies openly advised every farmer to remove all the trees because fertilizer gets absorbed by the aggressive root system of the trees and it will not produce yield for the crops. So, across the country in the last 35–40 years, a huge depletion of green cover happened. That is the main reason why waters have receded. Another thing is there is a serious exploitation of groundwater, which is an inevitable consequence of not having enough water in the rivers.
In your video you said something like, people believe that water brings forest, but the opposite is more true, forest brings water.
It is so, there is substantial science today to show you that it is the tree cover which attracts rain. And right now, we see that wherever the rains happen in India, the monsoon is becoming so scattered, though the same volume of water is coming down, in principle. In the last 100 years, there's not been too much variation in the amount of water or the precipitation coming down on the Indian subcontinent. But where it is coming down, in what patterns it is coming down is completely altered, mainly because of lack of green cover. And today there is no more debate about it, everybody knows that it's the forests which draw water or rain.
But you have a background touring the water, going down the river, more or less like Mark Twain did that in Mississippi 100 years before. You have seen the rivers depleting. But then you set yourself the target, how can we mobilize people to be engaged with this? What was your thinking?
See, in the year 1998, certain UN agencies came and made a prediction that in the southernmost state of India, which is the Tamil Nadu, they made a prediction in the next 25 years, that is by 2025, 60% of Tamil Nadu will go through desertification. Well, I don't like predictions of any kind, whether it's about individual life or about the nation or about the world. So I went about looking for myself. I traveled around Tamil Nadu just to see if this is true. Then I found that it will not go till 2025, it will happen much sooner. So I started planting trees in people's minds for 6 years. That's a very tough terrain. Once that was done, we started transplanting on the land. So we've planted about over 32 million trees. It has changed the landscape of Tamil Nadu. It has increased the green cover by 7.2%. And above all, it has set forth a huge awareness in the population. We have over 3,000 green schools today, that is, if a school plants over 10,000 trees, they're certified as green schools, so children are getting into it big time. Culturally, there is a lot of awareness about it. And we brought about this thing about children can have trees as pets, which is caught on very well in many states today. All this happened, but one thing I realized was, individually whatever we do, as organizations whatever we do, is not enough. We need a government policy, we need a long-term policy which will determine how we use our natural resources, particularly rivers and forests and soil. These three things, how this should be managed. So we are looking at how to make the soil and water, particularly rivers and forests, as a national treasure, not as something that everybody can use whichever way they want. As a part of this, it has been in my mind for the last 25 years, I've been watching that rivers have been depleting, but particularly in the last 7 years, I'm not able to tell you exactly why, but in the last 7 years, the depletion is so steep that I've been watching this with great distress, how it is depleting, at the rate at which it is depleting. In another 15 years' time, I believe, and many studies today are beginning to say this, that most rivers in India, at least 60% of the rivers in India will become seasonal, not perennial rivers. So, when we started this project Green Hands to plant trees, I made a simple process that because this is a spiritual movement, we had large following, because this is a very eclectic group of people, non-religious spiritual movement, handling spiritual process as a science, as a technology for your well-being. So I started this movement, making people breathe with the trees and make them experientially see that what you exhale, the trees are inhaling, and what the trees are exhaling, you're inhaling. So literally 1/2 of your breathing apparatus are hanging out there on the trees. Once we made people experience this, now I can't stop them from planting trees. Everybody's just going wild. Wherever they can, they're planting trees and everybody wants to plant trees. So many movements, hundreds of movements have started across Tamil Nadu, many organizations. And when we set up a Guinness record of planting the maximum number of trees in a day, I saw such a healthy this thing happening that at least another 20 to 27 organizations desperately trying to break that record. I thought that's really great that such things began to happen. So the Rally for Rivers itself is something that we envisioned and set it forth, and there were lots of skepticism everywhere, and people said you can never put this… Because in India, rivers are a concurrent subject between the central or the federal government and the state governments. States are ruled by various different political parties, they never come together. When I went to one of the states, the chief minister who was there, who happened to be a federal minister at one time in another government, he said, Sadhguru, we came up with a similar policy about 24 years ago, but we just could not get concurrence from the states. But this time around, all political parties spoke in one voice, because last 6-7 years I've been clandestinely working to get their, for them to build some trust with me, that when I unrolled the rally, every one of them came up and shared… Normally these opposition parties will never sit together on dais. They sat together, they spoke in one voice, which is a tremendous concurrence. This concurrence was one big stumbling block which we crossed quite effortlessly, and 162 million people participated in the rally, which is the largest ever for any movement.
What confuses me a little bit, I've been a lot to India, but of course I'm not an Indian. I mean, you speak like a politician, like a political organizer, but you look like an Indian holy man. How do you combine these two?
I think I'm just speaking like a responsible human being,
okay.
Not as a politician or a holy man or an unholy man. The problem is just this, that people have taken identities like this. Somebody is an environmentalist, somebody is a politician, somebody is a spiritual person. I feel what we need is inclusive human beings, that every one of us will do whatever within our capability, whatever is possible we will do for the well-being of all life around us. And I think that's just what I'm doing, and that's just what I've inspired people to do. And only because people recognized that I don't belong to any group or any party or any kind of segregation, that's why the entire India responded the way it responded.
But are your thinking rooted in religion, meaning traditional Hindu practice, Shivaism, or is it rooted in the practice you mentioned of yoga, which is of course a practice which is secular but still related to traditional Indian thinking? I mean, how will you describe your relationship to Indian traditional thinking and religion?
See, for me, when people refer to me as a Sadhguru, what they are saying is that I'm an uneducated guru. Because Sadhguru is not a title, it's a description. Like if you want to go to your doctor, if you have a dental problem, you go to a dentist. If you have some problem with your bone, you go to the orthopedic, you don't go to the wrong person. So when you say a Sadhguru, it's a description that he does not know any scriptures, he does not know any religion, he does not know any dogma or ritual. There's only one thing he knows. He knows this piece of life absolutely from its origin to its ultimate. Because I know this piece of life, and that's the only thing I know, by inference I seem to know everything else around me because for every human being, you know only what you experience. Rest you don't know, it's just imagination. What else do we know, tell me? What you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you touch, this is the only way you know life. So if you know this piece of life in its absolute nature, by inference you know almost everything that's worth knowing.
When we discussed before you came here, you made a point which is very close to my heart for sure, and that is that environmentalists need to get out of the group of the very converted, sometimes a little bit on the fringe of politics, and into the mainstream to mobilize, not in the thousands, but in the case of India, in the millions and in the tens of millions. So how did you manage that?
So when you utter the word environmentalist, I don't know how it's understood in many other parts of the world, but in India, an environmentalist means somebody who will protest against something. They're always against somebody or something. An environmentalist means he must be the most inclusive person possible, but they're always exclusive. Sometimes I wonder if it's just their livelihood, because they don't come to any solutions. They only know how to point out problems and make bigger problems out of it. What I see is, without engaging the governments of the day, you are not going to come to any solution. You're only going to talk about the problem. And above all, in a country like India, where the population pressure on the land is so heavy, if you do not talk about people's well-being, you can as well forget about environmental movements of any kind. It's very important. Environmental movement presents our concerns in a way that it's beneficial for the people, that they must understand by engaging with it, they will benefit in some way, because they're just fighting for their survival. You can't tell them to go save the planet, it's not going to work. So this is the fundamental difference that I try to bring about. And just now I was talking to one of your colleagues there, and the main thing is, the policy document when I gave, I insisted with the Prime Minister that it should not go to the Environment Ministry. Because if it goes to the Environment Ministry, it just becomes one more file there. There are lots of files out there saying great things which never happen. I said this must go to the Economic Advisor, and fortunately it went to the Economic Advisor and to the Planning Commission, which is today called as Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog has been appointed as the nodal agency to handle this policy, which is an extremely positive step. This means there's going to be action on the ground. And this is because of this that now 8 states have signed MOUs with us, totally amounting to, what is 200 crores? I'm sorry. 200 crores is 2,000 million. 2,000 million trees to be planted along the riversides. We have signed agreements with 8 different states. This has happened only because it went to the Economic Advisor, not to the Environment Ministry.
I mean, historically in India, the discussion about development and environment has been framed as a contradiction. Do you want to develop, or do you want to take care of the environment?
There were moments, ape versus man movements, because people thought if you save the forest, only monkeys will live there.
Exactly. And how, I mean, also Prime Minister Modi, as I see it, has really embraced a completely different vision for India, where you integrate environment and development into the future. But how did you support that, to bring that out to the masses?
See, one important aspect of this is, I mean, when we drove the rally across the country, we spoke only about minimum 1 kilometer plantations on the riverside. The policy includes various other aspects, but for the mass movement we focused on one-point agenda so that common people understand this easily. So one aspect of this is, Indian rivers, the major rivers, run for approximately 20,000 kilometers, which means on either side it's 40,000 square kilometers. Out of this, 25%, fortunately, happens to be in the government hands. Now we are insisting, except what they earmark for next 50 years of development plans, rest of it, no matter where it is, all government land should be forested. This is what we're shooting for. And in principle they've agreed. In practice it has to come forth. There are many challenges on the ground, but it has to be handled. The remaining 75% of the land is farmland. So, in this, about 6 to 7% is delta land. We don't have to touch the delta land, they're all rice bowls. You don't have to touch that, we can leave it as it is. So what we're talking about is 65% of the land, approximately 28,000 square kilometers minimum. We want to convert these lands from crop-based agriculture to tree-based agriculture. As I was telling you earlier, India is importing 43,000 crores, that is nearly
$8 billion worth of timber from elsewhere. Right now the law is such that if you grow a tree on your land, you cannot cut it. So nobody will grow a tree. It is very important that what I grow on my land, I can do whatever I want with it, only then I will grow trees. Though people know it's lucrative to grow trees, they will not grow because they will not get permission to cut it. So just because environmentalists will go and say, you should not cut the tree, I have seen these things happening. Somebody in their private land, trees that they have grown, they try to cut. Some environmentalists will come and protest because that's their living. Every 2 months they have to have a site to protest somewhere. By this, we are just killing the entire tree plantations that people could do because more than 75% of the land is owned by private owners. Why will they grow anything that they cannot crop? You have to allow them to crop, and we have to benefit from the cycles of plantations and this, because ultimately, all said and done, the more wood we use rather than metal and other things, it is ecologically more sensible, because this is the only thing we can grow back. We can't grow back iron ore or oil or anything. The only thing that we can grow back is trees. If we grow them in large scale and it is economically beneficial for the farmer, only then it'll happen. Another aspect is India used to have a very high level of fruit diet in its day-to-day diet, to a point where ancient travelers like Megasthenes and Yuan Sen, who came hundreds of years ago, they all noted that Indian people have a very high fruit diet in their daily consumption. But today only 4% of the diet is fruit. This 4% is largely consumed by the elite in the urban areas. The rural population, we have looked around and seen many rural children have not eaten a fruit in 30 days' time. If they eat a fruit, it's just a banana. Other than that, there is no fruit available because everything has been ripped off in the last 35–40 years' time. So we are trying to bring fruit back into Indian diet. We are going to start a campaign once this horticultural movement takes off. Now our focus is setting up large-scale demonstrations how shifting from crop-based agriculture to tree-based agriculture can be very, very beneficial to the farmer. It can enhance his income 3 to 8 times. We were working with a group of Vietnamese, I don't know if there are any of the Vietnamese participants here, are there? Yes. Some Vietnamese experts, they came and worked with us for some time, and they said their farmers' income has gone up 20 times over, shifting from rice cultivation to fruit cultivation. I said, how is this possible? They're laughing at us, saying that we came to India 23 years ago and studied in the Indian universities. We took this knowledge and put it into land. Your people got PhDs. So we are seeing how to put this back into the land so that farmer can benefit, because Indian farmers' condition is very bad. One more thing that has made this happen, that we are going for very water-thirsty crops like rice, wheat and sugarcane mainly, because these are the only 3 crops which have minimum support price. Now in the policy we are trying to change this, that fruit should have minimum support price and there must be cold chains and value addition industry coming up. This is why we are going for large-scale modules of 50-kilometer stretches minimum we are talking about in 5 different states, where riverside or riparian lands can be made into horticultural lands with all the needed support system, so that it becomes an economic success. Once it becomes an economic success, there is no stopping it.
It's interesting you bring up Vietnam, because Vietnam is probably the biggest global success of any nation when it comes to the transformation of its agriculture. It has gone from being the biggest rice importer in the world to the second biggest rice exporter in the world, and as you say, also diversify crops in a fantastic, impressive way. But I'm really interested in how do you communicate with people? I mean, you have been able to speak to people who…
You already said I'm like a politician.
Yeah, but politicians, maybe some Indian politicians like Prime Minister Modi, but politicians have difficulties often really appealing to people. I mean, let's face it, many of the people you want to reach out to and have reached out to, they base their daily life is to get how to get enough chapati for my family tomorrow, what to eat tomorrow, how to get chapati or rice, how can I just sustain my life? And how do you then frame a language, a message, which get people to really do something, to plant tree or support your movement? How to engage with people?
Say, I feel in every nation, I'm sure there are many committed people here wanting to do things in their countries. It's very important that there is a certain trust with the people. When I say trust, the environmentalists themselves may not be able to generate that trust because they may be scientists, they may be knowledgeable, but they don't know how to connect with the people. So they have to use those people who already have a connection with the people and who are not vested interests. So, one thing is, this has not just happened out of the blue, this Rally for Rivers. This 160 million people coming and supporting this is not simply an accident. It is something that we built in the last 35 years of work. We built this trust with people. When I spoke to one very important politician and he was praising me, I said, see, I will never speak for you, do you understand that? Maybe you're wasting your words of praise on me because I'm not going to ever speak for you. So he said something very fantastic which really moved me. He said, Sadhguru, I have my politics, other people have their politics, we all do whatever we do. But in this country we need at least one voice which speaks the truth. I want your voice to be that voice. I said, this is too mature for a politician. I bowed down to him, I said, this is too great, this is too fantastic. So, to become that voice which is trusted, to become that voice which people know is not a vested interest is most important. So I would say, in your countries and in your societies, whoever is that voice, you must pick out that person and make sure that person speaks. It could be a sports star, it could be a film star, it could be a spiritual leader, it doesn't matter who they are, but it's a trusted voice, only then we can move the people. It's not just going to happen because you say environment, because environment is too complex an issue for common people to understand. As you said, they're interested in how to make their next meal, they're not really interested in how to save the world tomorrow.
What a vote of confidence.
Huh?
What a vote of confidence from this politician who said we want one person to speak the truth.
I'm sorry?
That's such a vote of confidence.
Isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Isn't that wonderful?
But you also said that, I mean, up to this point, of course, because of the enormous decline in tree cover in India, many states or maybe the federal government has made regulations to prohibit tree cutting with the best of intentions to stop
Yes.
it. Then comes you and say, no, that doesn't work.
That's the whole thing. See, right now, for example, this is something I just handed over the letter to the Prime Minister's office just 2 days ago. See, individual farmer is not taxed for his income in India. Farm produce is not taxed. But if the farmers get together and farmers producers organization, these are called FPOs in India, which we are trying to promote now, if you form an FPO, then the FPO gets taxed. So we are making sure scale never happens. Right now the average land holding in India, because of these thousands of years of farming and, bifurcation of lands, is about 1 hectare, 2.25 acres, you can't invest anything. If you invest something, it will just sink you down so badly. I just met a farmer a month ago, in Tamil Nadu itself, 27-year-old young farmer. He's got 3.5 acres. I asked him, what is your water source? He says he has sunk 9 bore wells. 9 bore wells means it's over 1 crore rupees. 1 crore rupees, what, somebody dollars, euros?
10 million. 10 million.
Really?
10 million.
10 million rupees, all right, which is nearly $1.5 million. He spent that much on 3.5 acres. There is no way, it doesn't matter what he grows, there is no way he will ever recover that money. He has to either sell the land, run away or hang from a tree. This is what is happening. Because the largest investment in agriculture is in irrigation. So one thing we are trying to change is to bring farmers together to a minimum of 10,000 acres, kind of farmers producers organizations, and outsource irrigation through corporates. For this, we are working on legal structures so that farmers' land is 100% safe. The moment you ask somebody to invest on farmland, first question and fear that comes up is they're going to take away your land one day. So we want to establish a legal structure which we are working on right now to see that farmers' land is 100% protected. At the same time, the corporate which invests in irrigation also has protection for its investment for a substantial period of time. So how to do this legally and legislatively is what we are working at, because without scaling up, investment is just going waste. Each farmer has a connection, each farmer has a bore well, each farmer has a pump. It is such a waste of everything, and above all, farmers do not know how to manage micro-irrigation. I have seen this in our own yoga center. We put micro-irrigation. Somebody comes and digs it up tomorrow morning. You ask them what happened, they said, no, we were digging, just it got cut by itself. They will tell me stories, and after 2 years it is all piled up in one heap and it's not working. Unless corporations get into it, micro-irrigation will not work. Right now, 85% of India's water consumption is agriculture. This can be reduced to at least 30% if we go in for micro-irrigation in a big way. And this is only possible if organized sector comes into it. For this, land protection, the safety of the farmer's land must be ascertained with proper legal structures in an enforceable manner. This is a key element that we are working at. And right now, about the effluent treatment, as I was telling you, one big problem with India is we are asking the polluting industries to treat their effluent. They treat it during the day, in the night they just let it out into the river. This is what is happening. Now we are trying to bring the government to this because already so much investments have been made, but these investments are not working because obviously rivers are polluted, that means they are not working. We want to make treatment industry a completely separate industry. Polluting industry should never treat the water. Another business should treat the water. When your effluent is my business, I'm not going to let it go into the river. I'm going to make sure it comes to me. And above all, more than going into the river, it is very important. Right now, this is very unplanned agriculture. There is a city here, but vegetables are growing 1,000 kilometers away. Fruits are growing somewhere in another part of the country. Being a tropical nation, we can grow almost everything in most parts of the country. And for example, Mumbai produces 4 billion liters of effluent per day, okay? 4 billion liters of effluent per day. If you treat this water and use this with micro-irrigation, what you can grow in terms of crops is phenomenal. But that water is not made use of, it's just let out into the rivers or into the oceans. So the policy document is working towards it, how to transform filth into wealth. Because without economic sense, we are trying to talk ecology, it's not going to work. We have to present ecology as the most sensible thing to do. Economically, it's the most sensible thing to do. Commercially, it's the most profitable thing to do. That is how we are trying to present the draft.
We are coming to the end. I mean, you have told us a story as how you have inspired millions of people in India to act on the environment, how you on tree planting, how you was involved in this, how you merged environment into well-being so that you can appeal to a lot of people. But here is an audience of people from all corners of the world. I mean, from Mexico to Indonesia, from Vietnam to Germany. Is this general lessons learned, and what will you tell people here? If they go out in their communities, their societies, and want to mobilize people, what's the lesson learned from India?
Say, except in nations in South America and maybe Africa where there is enormous land, we could approach it differently. Wherever there is population pressure, what we are doing in India is a very sensible way to approach. Mexico, definitely it's a sensible way to approach. Indonesia also. Where there is not much population pressure on the land, we can go in a more purist way. This is not to my liking what I'm doing, but I know if I talk very pure ecology, nobody's going to walk with me. It's very important, people have to benefit, only then they will walk with us. Right now we are looking at this. over 41,000 acres of forest land in India has less than 10% green cover. We are seeing how to put the green cover back in that. Over 300,000 acres, square kilometers, I'm sorry, this is not acres, square kilometers of land has less than 40% green cover in the forest. How to put this back? If we do just this, which can be easily done because this is under government control, the land, but people are using it for grazing and other things. So we are trying to bring a policy change where what is adjoining villages, we will use the local people to do the plantations in the forest, but they can take forest produce. They cannot cut down the tree, but they can take forest produce, they can use the foliage as a supplement for their cattle and stuff, they can use other kinds of forest products, there are small berries and other things which they can take. Only thing is they cannot cut the trees. If you allow this economic advantage, they will participate. Otherwise, if you try to just protect it, it is thousands of kilometers of land to be protected, it's never going to happen. People will find their way, there is corruption in the forest department, people will somehow access it and do all the negative things. It is important that the new forest that we develop or the rejuvenated forests adjacent to the villages, villages have an access to it and a responsibility towards it. This has to be established, otherwise we will not succeed, because we've been talking about it for 5 decades now and nothing happened. I don't know how long to wait. I'm not willing to wait. I want to make sure that something begins to happen on the ground. This can only happen if we show them that it's advantageous to them to protect the forest.
Thank you so much. To me, you are the incarnation of the Sustainable Development Goals, because while there are 17 of them, they're all at the end about these two, people and planet, uplift the people and protect the planet, and that's your mission. So thank you so much, people and planet.
Thank you very much. This is the river revitalization policy document presented to the Indian government. We are giving a copy to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We look forward to making this happen.
Let's go so we can… I want to make photos.